we want to welcome Sean Bruyea, who's served our nation as a retired captain, and his wife, Carolina, and they will be giving testimony regarding the new Veterans Charter. And I think, Sean, I've noticed you enough times at meetings here that you actually know the whole drill of submissions by witnesses and even the question rotation. So I'm going to allow you to go ahead, and we'll just keep the time so we stay within the maximum here.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you very much for inviting myself and my wife here today to testify in the new Veterans Charter. In many ways, Canada's veterans were betrayed by the MPs who sat in on the 38th Parliament. They passed the Veterans Charter in mere seconds on May 10, 2005, without even reading it. Their Senate colleagues did little better, granting it just 2 days of debate. At its heart, C-45, now known as the new Veterans Charter, removed the lifelong disability lump sum for pain and suffering. In contrast, when the subject of MP pensions was debated, which affects only a privileged few, was raised in the 35th Parliament, it was the focus of a supply day debate. And when Bill C-85 was finally tabled, there was so much debate that a time allocation motion was required. So while changes to MP pensions were hotly debated over months of Parliament, the new Veterans Charter came in like a thief in the night, with the acquiescence of all four parties of the House of Commons. Ironically, the rapid passage of the bill occurred while most members of the subcommittees of both houses, both committees on Veterans Affairs, had just returned or were still in Europe celebrating VE Day. Quite simply, VAC betrayed veterans and hoodwinked Parliament, and I am here to ask you to right that wrong. Unstated at any point during the parliamentary process debate is the real reason why VAC needed to pass C-45 with such urgency. Its officials had recommended, quote, a shift to greater use of lump sum payments combined with customized rehabilitation services to regain control of an alarming future liability scenario. This was, however, hinted at by the testimony of Darragh Mogan when he appeared before the only Senate committee meeting on the Veterans Charter and admitted that the program, quote, would pay for itself over a 15 to 20-year period. This is the best illustration of a hidden agenda in recent Canadian political history. Make no mistake about it. The remainder of the programs in the Charter for disabled veterans and serving members existed in one form or another before the Charter was passed. This was not, as Minister Guarneri claimed during the May 11th Senate hearing to the Senate National Finance Committee, quote, an entirely new vehicle designed to deliver what the current system cannot. Louise Richard, Harold Leduc, and I were the only Canadians given an opportunity to testify to committee in opposition to the Charter as it was written. Indeed, we were all sold the new legislation based upon short briefings which used such catchphrases as opportunity with security, widespread consultations, case management, and psychosocial rehabilitation, to name a few. Although Veterans Affairs did not have a vocational rehabilitation or job placement program at the time, CICIP vocational rehabilitation program had a long and successful history, and the CF had at least 3 job placement programs in operation. Minister Guarneri also claimed that the new system, quote, will take us back to the same position we were in and enable us to provide the same level of reestablishment support we provided following the Second World War. Then, ministers from each of a half dozen or more departments had been organized into a special committee. Experts from the military, medicine, rehabilitation, and representatives from the highest level of the federal, all provincial, and most large municipal governments, industry and community leaders, all came together to create what was largely accepted to be the best reestablishment and rehabilitation program in the world at that time. Then the Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs personally recruited 34 individuals straight from the military to act as the senior managers to implement these new programs in Veterans Affairs, because he knew that veterans were the best to understand the needs of other veterans. Veterans, whether wounded or not, were given health care, low-cost insurance, and financial assistance to reestablish. All were offered a choice of land grants, farming assistance, low-interest mortgages, university or apprenticeships, as well as small business assistance. Meanwhile, any disabled veterans were provided with all of the above, plus greater health care, the best case management and rehabilitation the world had to offer, and a monthly disability pension paid for life. Where there were approximately 1 million World War II veterans compared to roughly 500,000 Canadian Forces veterans, both deserve similar benefits and compassion for their injuries suffered during their honorable service to this nation. Whereas World War II benefits were designed by a committee of ministers, the new Veterans Charter and its associated programs were almost solely authored by a modernization task force headed by a VAC director, Dara Mogan, who called upon another VAC director, Ken Miller, to be his principal salesman. They presented the charter as a fait accompli to the greater Canadian government, as well as to Parliament, veterans organizations, and the Canadian public. To my knowledge, not one member of the task force in VAC has any military background, and reportedly not a single senior manager in Veterans Affairs is a veteran. More disturbingly, they had very little oversight or meaningful revision by superior or elected officials, and have seen almost none since. The minister promised reviews every 2 to 3 months in 2005, and later the department talked of regular reviews of perhaps every year or 2 years. As a result of my testimony in 2005 to Senate, the department created the Special Needs Advisory Group, and then later the new Veterans Charter Advisory Group, to ensure that all those veterans who are disabled and their families are being appropriately cared for by the Charter. These groups have done good work, making approximately 299 recommendations for change to the Charter. However, all suffer from the same process flaw. The people in charge of receiving the recommendations are the very same as those who authored the Charter. It is therefore not surprising to note that less than half a dozen recommendations have even been partially implemented by VAC in the 4 years since SNAG's first report was submitted, and that no serious consideration has been given to any recommendation that might involve financial consequences. Had the real intent of the Veterans Charter been any other than saving money, such groups would have been convened before the legislation was tabled so that all the recommendations could have been part of the original program. Moreover, there would have been several committee hearings prior to its passage in the House. True to the spirit of VAC's hidden agenda, SNAG's reports have never been made public, and the proceedings of these advisory groups are never published. In the same way, when the Charter was created, only 1 or 2 individuals from each of only 6 veterans organizations were involved. Each was sworn to confidentiality and agreed to, in effect, unquestionably support the Charter. These leaders could not share any details of the Charter with their membership. Amazingly, this is what VAC has called, quote, the most widespread consultation in VAC's history. It is frightening that they believe this to be true. For the veteran and CF community, it is like we are playing hockey by the rules on our side, but VAC's net is far too small to fit the puck and facing in the opposite direction. Canada's men and women in uniform have very high respect for our elected members of Parliament, and we ask you to do what we cannot. Please hold Veterans Affairs Canada accountable. It is unacceptable that VAC bureaucrats should be able to accept or reject any recommendations which affect the social contract between Canada and its veterans. It should be Parliament, and especially this committee, which instructs VAC to implement changes. Somehow along the way, VAC officials and Parliament developed a highly dysfunctional relationship. Bureaucrats believe that they can accept or reject whatever Parliament tells them, and Parliament has done very little to change such unbridled arrogance of certain VAC senior managers. Let me ask some questions. Would a lifelong disability pension not offer more security than a one-time lump sum? In a world where university education is a prerequisite for government jobs, how can VAC promote the fast-tracking of veterans while excluding university education? Would no-interest loans or grants like those offered to World War II veterans not offer more opportunity to start a business while they can still count on the security of a lifetime disability pension? Why is it that public servants can use their rehabilitation time and income to contribute to their retirement pension, but veterans cannot? Why is it that public servants can arrange for a gradual back-to-work schedule, but the Veterans Charter does not allow this? Why is it that not a single dollar earned by a public